California has millions of homes that could be damaged in a strong earthquake. Older homes are especially vulnerable to quake damage, so you may need to take steps to strengthen yours. Visit strengthenyourhouse.com to learn how to strengthen your home and help protect it from damage. The work may cost less than you think and can often be done in just a few days. Strengthen your home and help protect your family. Get prepared today and worry less tomorrow. Visit strengthenyourhouse.com.
Time now for Voices of the Future, the show that amplifies the perspectives of the next generation of Republican leaders, young professionals, students, and policymakers who champion the values of limited government, free enterprise, and individual liberty. From grassroots activism to tech-driven policy debates, this program is your front row seat to the ideas shaping a freer, stronger America. Now, your host for Voices of the Future, Ardis Jackson.
Hello, everyone. This is Ardis Jackson with Voices of the Future. Welcome to another podcast here, or recording for this week's episode. And I am going to talk about a subject that may be a little controversial to some young people, but for us young Republicans, I think they're very supportive of this topic. But I do think it's a discussion we do need to have. And so what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to explain the core reasons why we as Republicans are supportive of strong border security. And so I'm going to list a few facts, and I'm going to just give my personal perspective on why I also, as a Republican myself, also support strong border security. And so I hope that it'll be enlightening to those who are young Republicans, but also to those who may be watching who are not of the Republican viewpoint and can learn a little bit of insight as to why we Republicans advocate so much for strong border security. And so the first reason I'll say, and I think it's pretty important, is we as Republicans like to advocate for strong border security for our sovereignty and law enforcement. We Republicans emphasize that securing borders is essential for national sovereignty and for enforcing immigration law. So this kind of gets lost in the conversation on the national stage. But here in California in particular, being that California is a border state itself, it's important that we understand that in this fight for immigration or centered around immigration, we on the Republican side, we're fighting for strong border security. We're very supportive of mostly of what ICE is doing in enforcing immigration law. And the top reason is for our nation's sovereignty. We believe that we need to have strong border security in order to have a sovereign nation. Without, strong border security, we don't really have a nation. There have been countless examples of nations that allow just complete open borders, and those nations start to fall, especially in Western civilization. I would say that a nation or group of countries would be the EU. A lot of the EU has allowed open borders, basically allow immigrants from many places, many times third world countries, to come into their countries. They don't do enough, security or background checks on them. And so this has led to a rise a fall of a lot of the principles that made Europe what it is. And so we as Republicans are trying to prevent that from happening to the United States of America, in particular in the state of California and other border states as well. We also are very strong advocates of preventing illegal entry, stopping unauthorized immigration, including through physical barriers, technological surveillance, and more personnel. So we want people to come in. We're not anti-immigrant, as a lot of the media will portray us as. We're not anti-immigrant. A lot of us just want people to come in legally through ports of entry. And I, as me personally, understand that it can be a bit frustrating for some. I've heard that there's complaints that the legal route to obtaining citizenship in America is very long and, very tedious. And, it can be very, I guess, tempting to want to come in just illegally through non-ports of entry, legal ports of entry. So we advocate for strong border security, which has legal ports of entry. And there are countless laws that advocate for that. And so we're not against immigrants. We're not anti-immigrant. We just want immigrants to come in legally. And so that's one of the reasons that we support strong border security. So we have a, strong security to provide for our law enforcement who enforce the immigration laws and for the safety of the immigrants that are seeking to come here. Coming through the legal port of entry, there's a few advantages to it. One being that we can stop human smuggling that happens along the border, especially in places like California. A lot of times there are people who will prey on immigrants and will actually, have them come in illegally, but they're paying them a lot of money. And it ends up working against the immigrant who has to sometimes have to endure very uncomfortable, unsafe conditions for them getting here. A lot of them are caught, traversing against, bodies of water, open desert. They're just prey to the elements. And a lot of the times they have no resources when they're coming in illegally. But coming in through the port of entry, they can get resources, they can claim asylum, and coming in legally allows them to have the support of the United States government behind them. And it also prevents people from smuggling drugs. Having ports of entry, we can, identify illegal drugs that are coming into our country that's been devastating to a lot of communities in America. So that's one of the reasons why we advocate for legal ports of entry. And so that's part of our border security viewpoint. Another reason is, and it's very important, is national security. We have concerns about drug trafficking, especially fentanyl, considering what it's doing to a lot of communities in America, all the way to places like Chicago, places that, like even in California, where we have illegal drug entries coming in through the state of California itself, ends up way past the state of California in places like Chicago or Detroit. A lot of communities end up suffering from that. We also have national security concerns on cartel operations, gang violence. We saw that last year with a lot of the gangs that were taking over apartment complexes in Colorado. And it can terrorize a lot of communities and overwhelm local law enforcement. And so a lot of times we're trying to prevent that. We're also trying to prevent, as I mentioned earlier, human trafficking, any criminal elements entering the country. And that's also a big reason behind that as well, is trying to prevent a national security concern that's big too, is terrorism. We have a lot of times people who enter the country illegally and they have terror or terrorist viewpoints, or they sympathize with terrorists. And we've seen a lot of times people who are terrorists or are sympathetic to terrorists commit acts of violence against Americans here on American soil. So these are all national security concerns that we Republicans share, and we don't want these things to be happening in our country. And one of the ways we can prevent that is by having strong border security. Another one is that we want to have enforcement of existing laws. We Republicans often argue that laws that are already in place are sufficient if properly enforced. We had an administration previously that refused to enforce our immigration laws, and that made it where, immigration for the first time, I believe, became a national topic, because the Biden administration lied to the American people by saying that everything was okay when it wasn't. And even here in California, we had, our governor basically saying that, migrants were safe and that American citizens were more at risk of harming us than, people who are illegally here, and were pushing for a lot of benefits for illegal immigrants that cost the taxpayers a lot of money here in California. And so we want to enforce the laws that try to prevent a lot of the problems that result from illegal immigration. We want to support stricter penalties for unlawful entry. We think right now people, when they come into the country illegally in states like here in California, they would get released into the country or into the state, and then they would have to have a judge tell them that they're supposed to appear for their hearing, but a lot of times, because since they just been released into the country, they're not under any obligation to come to those court dates, and there's no way to track them as well. So we Republicans will like more stricter penalties for people who make unlawful entries into this country. We want enforcement of laws that prevent visa overstays and poor compliance by states and local jurisdictions. We also believe that sanctuary jurisdictions, like a lot of places here in California, are prohibiting federal law enforcement from doing their jobs and enforcing federal law. And so another thing we advocate for is restricting incentives for illegal immigration, policies aimed at reducing pull factors and programs or weak enforcement. We do not want that. We want to have more stronger enforcement against or deterring illegal immigration. And so we want to have more programs and penalties in place that will deter, increasing illegal immigration more. So we're more for deterrence of illegal immigration. And so these are things that are important to us Republicans. And also some of the, features and things that we believe contribute to strong border security has been the construction of the border wall, which has been met with a lot of resistance on the Democratic side. We believe that having a physical wall does help border security agents do their jobs better, being that a lot of the border in places like California and beyond have miles of just unsecured places along the border that allows or incentivizes illegal immigration to continue to happen from, having migrants who will enter those areas because they're not secured. And we believe having a border wall will make, it a lot harder for illegal immigration, for illegal entry into this country. We also want to increase enforcement of patrols along the border. We believe that, there wasn't enough border agents that could patrol these areas, and the prior administration and even our governor were supportive of efforts that moved money and funding away from hiring more border agents to sanctuary policies that are pro-illegal immigration, in my opinion. and in a lot of Republicans' opinions. And so we, thankfully, with the Trump administration, we have now our president who got the back of border security agents. With the passage of the big beautiful bill, we've been able to have more funding to hire more agents. So there's more agents to patrol these areas that has been previously unsecured. So obviously we want more increasement of border patrol. We want a physical barrier, and we also want more funding and investment in drones, which has been helping. But we do want to have more drones that can help add a layer of security from the air that can detect illegal entry and potentially help border agents secure illegal migrants or migrants that are entering the country illegally, and drugs. So we believe that reducing or cutting federal funding to sanctuary jurisdictions that harbor people who enter the state of California as well as the rest of the country illegally is hampering, making our nation weaker. So we're against sanctuary, jurisdictions and them refusing to want to cooperate with ICE and CBP. And we think that's doing more harm to this nation. So I would say like this, that we also acknowledge, us Republicans, we also acknowledge that there is a human element in all of this as well. And I would say that, again, most Republicans are open to immigrants coming to America. We understand that this nation was built on immigrants, but we have to do something about the illegal crossings. And me personally, I am for strong border security because, number one, the problem is that it seems to be more of a open call to ignore federal laws on, our immigration system. And the problem with that is that when you ignore federal law or federal immigration law, in my opinion, and that's not being discussed a lot, it opens a Pandora's box that says, well, if we can ignore federal law on immigration, then why can't we ignore civil rights laws? Why can't we ignore those federal laws? Once we get to a point where we are either willingly ignoring existing laws, even if we don't like it, even if there's some people that don't like the immigration system and the way it works, in my opinion, the proper way to handle that is to have Congress, go to Congress, have Congress pass laws that will overturn the current federal immigration laws. But basically trying to harbor illegal migrants or basically defy ICE and what they're trying to do, they're enforcing immigration law. And so it's a dangerous precedent when we have Democrats here in the state of California, as well as our governor, trying to pass the new law that they just did, where they're trying to make it harder for ICE and for them to enforce immigration law. And I don't think that's a good thing because, one, they're putting people who are willingly risking their lives to enforce our laws in jeopardy. Their lives are literally being in jeopardy by wanting to have them unmasked, trying to reveal their identity. And so that the goal obviously is to pass that on to give the illegal migrant a heads up to avoid immigration enforcement. And so I just think it's a horrible thing when we start saying, well, we don't like the way federal immigration law is being enforced, so we should create policies that either ignore federal law in immigration. Because again, if we can do that, then that opens all of the other federal laws that are on the books those are not, why should those be enforceable? If we can't enforce immigration law, why should we enforce other laws? Why should we enforce civil rights laws? Why should we enforce, any form of due process? And so what the California Democrats and Democrats in large, the danger that they're moving us towards is a nation that doesn't respect or enforce its own laws. And if a nation can't enforce its own laws, then we're not really a nation. We're in a state of anarchy. And so we Republicans obviously feel that a better society is done when we have, law and order. But at the same time, I will say that I identify with the human element that, obviously we want to have, the migrants that are caught in, doing illegal crossings. We do want to treat them in a humane way. We acknowledge that a lot of them are, left everything they have to come here and they have nothing left to go back to. A lot of them are escaping persecution or facing violence in their home country. We also acknowledge that a lot of migrants are working in the state of California, and as they point out, they add to the labor market of many jobs here that they claim that Americans don't want to do. But at the same time, I advocate for a balance between enforcing our laws, but also having compassion and acknowledging the humanity as well. But we can't have a system that just favors the humanity part, the human element, and ignores the fact that there are dangerous situations or dangerous risks that come with letting just anyone into our country. We do have to we have to balance between respecting our laws and being humane and compassionate for people who are escaping persecution. And so what I would like, and I hope that us young Republicans can advocate for, is that we finally have this dealt with our political leaders in a bipartisan way. I believe if we get Democrats who want to advocate for the human element mixed with the Republicans and us who want to maintain law and order, why can't we just bring those two together and make some new laws that favor both a humane approach and that adds to border security? And why can't we do this in a bipartisan way, especially here in the state of California, instead of the Democrats here just ramming through, pro-immigrant rights and pro-immigrant laws without adding to border security? You can't have one without the other. And so, we can do better as a state, and we can do better as a nation, and we need to finally update our citizenship. We need to upgrade that. I've heard that it hasn't been updated since the 80s. It's time that we Republicans and Democrats come together to finally deal with this immigration problem and to resolve it in a bipartisan way. And I think we can do that. And many of us young Republicans are going to be the future in pursuing that agenda. We can finally solve this immigration problem if we have common sense and if we have compassion and a respect for the rule of law. And so I hope that I was able to enlighten everyone from a Republican perspective of why we Republicans support border security. We believe it's very important. It's paramount to our national security. It's paramount to us being a strong nation. And if we don't have strong border security, then we can't enjoy a lot of the liberties that we have here in America. And so I'm hoping that we can have more conversations about this. And I am very appreciative for the opportunity to be able to speak to you guys about that. And I'm looking forward to having further conversations in the future. And so, again, honored to have this conversation. And my name is Artist Jackson, again, with Voices of the Future. And I'm very thankful that the Silicon Valley of Young Republicans has given me this platform to speak about these issues. I look forward to speaking with you all again. Have a blessed day and have a blessed week, and I'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Voices of the Future with Artist Jackson, a presentation of the Silicon Valley Young Republicans. For comments and suggestions or to get involved, email svyr.gop@gmail.com. That's svyr.gop@gmail.com.
California has millions of homes that could be damaged in a strong earthquake. Older homes are especially vulnerable to quake damage, so you may need to take steps to strengthen yours. Visit strengthenyourhouse.com to learn how to strengthen your home and help protect it from damage. The work may cost less than you think and can often be done in just a few days. Strengthen your home and help protect your family. Get prepared today and worry less tomorrow. Visit strengthenyourhouse.com.